vital. One of the things we're announcing today is the National Wealth Fund. This is going to be, as the name suggests, a wealth fund. Other countries have this, you probably know. They have a national wealth fund, which means it's a government fund to get investment from the government, but also to get private investment in. We want to put some of that money into our ports, because ports like this and other ports around the country have huge potential, whether that's for floating offshore wind in some of them, whether that's for development of what you're already doing, getting back some of the work that was going on here before we left the EU. All of that, I think, can be part of the future here. So we see ports as a major driver of, I mean, growth is a funny old word because you don't use it much, but actually this is wealth creation. This is about making sure that people feel better off, and we drive the trade. What do you do here, sir?
So I look after communications, trying to tell everybody that 95% of stuff that comes and goes out of the UK does so by ports, and you know that's not always well understood, and we really need that government to come alongside us to make us more of a success.
I think one of the things that's been impressed on us this morning is just how much trade is coming through this port, how important it is to the country. In terms of the work that's going on. So we see this as really central. We've already earmarked money, as it were, to put into our ports for the future, to put that investment down. But I mean, it won't all be government money. I want private money coming in alongside it, investors to say, that's where I want to put my money going forward, and creating those conditions. And that's some of the discussions we've had here this morning, as you would have expected. Anybody else want to come in? Yep, by all means.
Afternoon. So, like many businesses, the port is looking to decarbonise, but we're finding the bottleneck is with the local infrastructure. What do you do? What do you plan to do to address this?
Rach, do you want to?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for that question. You know, you're absolutely right that if we're going to create these jobs, and the National Wealth Fund is about trying to create 650,000 new jobs in Britain in some of these industries, including making our ports fit for the future. And that does mean, and we've just been through with the team here at APB, it does mean ensuring that the planning system actually supports development and supports good jobs in places like Southampton. So we want to speed up the planning system. We know that we need more planners in local authorities to actually crack on with the planning applications that are coming through the system. And where places host local infrastructure, they should get something back for doing that, whether that is discounts on their energy bills or investment in the local infrastructure. But we can't hold back growth in the way that's happened the last few years. So we know, and Keir said this, we are going to sometimes have to do things that are unpopular, that some people will disagree with, but unless we do those things, we're not going to get that wealth creation, we're not going to get that prosperity, and that means we're not going to be able to improve living standards or improve our public services. So we really have to focus on wealth creation, and that means reforming the planning system so we can actually get stuff built in Britain again.
So just to give you an example, in adapting the port for floating offshore wind, you'll have seen what's possible. Some country in the world is going to get ahead in this game. And other countries want to compete. I think we should compete, and I think we can win that race. And that will mean that we are the sort of primary builders, designers and engineers of floating offshore wind, which are amazing pieces of kit. It will require work in our ports, of course it will. But that's the attitude we should have, which is there is a global competition for this stuff. We can get ahead of this. And if that requires us to take tough decisions on planning, then we'll take those decisions so that all of the available land here can be used and be, put to good effect in terms of the jobs of the future. Anything you wanted to add? No. Great. Good. Anywhere else? Yep. By all means, far away.
So you started. Well, firstly, hi. I'm Chaz.
Hiya.
So you first started on about jobs and future jobs. So many people here are actually agency workers and zero-hour contracts. Personally, that flexibility works really, really well for me, and I wonder what the Labour Party's position is on zero-hour contracts, and also, if you were to allow them to continue, what additional safeguards would you put in place for us?
Well, I think with zero-hour contracts, obviously, there are some across the country which are simply exploitative, and I've met many people on a zero-hours contract who simply don't know how many hours they're going to do the next day or the next week. And that means that they are simply not secure in knowing what bills they can pay, etc. On the other hand, you're right to say in some cases that flexibility works. And therefore, our plan is to get rid of the exploitative zero-hour contracts. I'm not going to beat about the bush. We want to stop the exploitative zero-hour contracts where people don't know what's happening, but with the flexibility so that people can have their hours regularised after a certain period of time, over 12 weeks or whatever. So you would have the right to demand the contract you need, but if you say this works for me, then you can carry on in the way that you are. It works for you, sir, does it?
The flexibility works for me, yeah. Clearly, sometimes I would like additional hours. Those aren't available to me, but that's a choice I've made.
Okay. And anything you want us to take when I'm on the train later on? What do you want me to be thinking about?
So I think protections. I think for people on zero contracts and agency workers, we fall into the guise of if we're sick, we're more likely to come into work because we don't get the same protections as full-time workers. And additionally, we get called into work, we're expected to turn up for work the next day, but yet very little notice can be given to us for our day's work to be cancelled. Yeah, no, that could be really. I had a family member who had no sick pay on her contract, and that meant in COVID she had to use all of her holiday because she couldn't afford a day off without pay to get through, which meant she had no holiday. So that's the human impact that has. Anyone else with a question? Yep.
How could we be an economic superpower again?
Rach, do you want to lead on this?
Yeah, so if you look at our performance as a country in terms of the economy the last 14 years, we've been in the sort of bottom third of the most developed countries. And if we'd been just at the middle of that league table, our economy today would be £150 billion bigger than it is. That would be worth £5,000 for every family in Britain. And it would mean that we would have had another £55 billion for our public services. So, economic growth, creating prosperity isn't just a nice to have, is absolutely essential if we want to make sure that people are better off. And that is what Keira and me and our plans are all about, ensuring that working people are better off. And you get that through growing the economy, and you get that growth by encouraging businesses to invest here. And so we want to be a pro-business and a pro-worker government. And we think that the two sides of the same coin. You can't be pro-working people unless you're pro-creating jobs and wealth creation in all parts of the UK. And you can't be pro-business unless you're pro-skilling up and making sure that young people are leaving school and college, university with the skills that are needed in the modern workforce today. So there are huge potential. There's huge potential in the UK economy, whether it is, as Keir says, in floating offshore wind, carbon capture and storage, green hydrogen, but also in industries like life sciences, our cultural industries. We are a fantastic country, and I see when I go around the country, brilliant businesses, fantastic workforce, doing amazing things, but it is not seen in the GDP numbers, and actually it's not seen in your wallets, is it, these last few years? People have had less money to spend, and at the same time public services have been falling back. So we need to turbocharge our economy again. That means reforming the planning system, reforming how our financial markets work to get more money ploughed in to help small businesses grow. And it means a government that is willing to roll up its sleeve, work with business, work with young people and the workforce, so that we can really make the most of the massive opportunities that we've got as a country, but opportunities that have not been fully realised these last few years.
Just follow on from that, and this is party political, so take it with a pinch of salt. You'll make your own of this, but I think that in the last few years we've had a lot of chaos, division and chopping and changing. It's politically funny that we've been through 5 prime ministers. We're on our second unelected prime minister. We've had, I don't know how many chancellors.
7.
But as you look in on politics, you must first think, what on earth's going on? But that chopping and changing, it is a serious issue. I mean, it's not just me from the Labour Party still knocking drawers. What happens then is global investors look into our country and think that is not the environment which I'm going to invest right now. The stability, the strategic thinking, the long-term thinking is necessary for investors to invest in the future of our country. And that's why it's really important. I mean, it is a sort of party political point, but you will know this. If a business is chopping and changing the whole time, can't make its mind up what it wants to do, the chances are it's not going to do very well. But if a business says, this is what we're going to do, this is the business plan, this is how we're going to execute it, and everybody understands what we're trying to do, it's much more likely to succeed. And so we need to get to that place of stability in our economy and in our politics, so that we're planning for 5 years and 10 years, not just chopping and changing every few months as to what the real priorities are. Where should we go next? Yep, behind us. You borrow that, and then we'll take that.
Thanks a lot. Have you any plans to improve the relationship with the EU? And on that basis, also getting rid of a lot of the bureaucracy involved in importing? Because I'm talking about goods that we need to import, and the amount of paperwork and hassle involved in doing it is causing a lot of grief for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, look, thank you for that question. You probably see this more sharply than almost anywhere else, because you are, operating a border effectively. We took a decision to leave the EU, so we're not going to go back in. But we think the deal we've got is botched. It's not good enough. And I think many businesses would say we need something that works better for us, because if you make it more difficult to trade, guess what? It's not so successful from our point of view. So we do think there's a better deal to be had. Obviously, that'll have to be negotiated. It does not mean going back in, but it does mean an improvement on what we've got for businesses. I think there's scope actually for improvement in other areas as well, on defence and on security. And on development and on research and education, etc. So yes is the answer. We want to get a better deal, because at the end of the day, we want you and those that are coming in and out of this port to be able to do as easily as is possible being outside the EU, and not to make life harder, because that means slowing down, less profit, more difficulty for businesses, put some businesses off. And that means that it's an inhibitor on growing our economy. Thank you for that. Anyone? Yes. There is one coming round.
Hiya. My question's on leaseholds and what Labour's plan is moving forward with leaseholds.
Yeah, we want to reform and get rid of a lot of the leasehold. The long leasehold, you mean, the leasehold owners?
Yeah, leasehold owners.
Yeah, we want to turn this around and make sure that the rights, if you like, are reversed. So that, are you a tenant somewhere?
I'm just buying a house that's a leasehold, so...
Oh, right, yeah. Well, we want to make it better for you and more secure for you. How long will you be... What's your leasehold that you'll be buying? Or
it's 120 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, we want to turn that around so that you get the better rights in this.
Yeah.
It's very important. Where are you buying? Locally?
Are you planning on, banning leaseholds or changing the common holds or something like that?
Yeah, we are. So that will make life a lot easier for you. Great, thank you. Yep.
I'm an undecided voter at the moment, so I would like to say that I'm a hard-working lady. Despite that, I am having to take on a second job to meet my cost of living, and I just want to know, why should I vote for you? Why would you deserve my vote? Because I am terrified of my future and the cost of living just going up and up and up. So how can you convince me that that's not going to be the case under a Labour government?
Well, look, thank you very much, and completely respect how hard you work and that you're an undecided voter. That's obviously for you to decide as we go into July the 4th how you want to cast your vote. What I would say is we are determined to change our economy to make sure we never get into a cost of living crisis like this again, because we know what it feels like. When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. My dad actually worked in a factory. My mum was a nurse, and sometimes we couldn't pay our bills. In our particular case, we had our phone bill cut off. So I know what it feels like not to be able to pay your bills, and that's the position too many people are in now. We're having to take on a second job, or cancelling a holiday, not having a kid's birthday in the same way, or even walking around the supermarket, looking at the price of some of the stuff and deciding I'm not going to do that this week. They may not seem like big things, but they really bear down on people. So we have to change the economy to make sure that never, ever happens again. And that does mean tough decisions. So we've got a big plan for energy. Renewable energy is cheaper. It is more secure, and it'll keep your bills down for good, not just for a year or two. Well, we can get going on that straight away. We want to set up Great British Energy, which will be a publicly owned energy company, so that where public money goes in, it comes back to the taxpayer. It will take time. If I stand here and say to you, the day after the election, I've got a wand in my pocket and I can wave it and you'll be fine, you wouldn't believe me and it wouldn't be true. But we can start on those plans straight away to make sure that your bills come down and the pressure goes down on you, whether that's food, whether that's energy. We need to stabilise the economy so that, have you got a mortgage or are you renting? Yeah, well, again, you'll probably, for a lot of people who are on a fixed rate mortgage, if they've had to change that in the last 2 years, their mortgage has gone up, usually by several £100s. That's a direct result of what Liz Truss did with the economy. I mean, it had a massive impact on mortgages. We have to change that on your behalf. And the last thing I'd say to you is this, but it is important. Politics is about policies and what we're going to do to change. It's also about who do we have in our mind's eye when we make decisions. And I have in my mind's eye working people like you who are struggling with the cost of living crisis. That is why we've done so much work on the economy and growing the economy, because in the end, creating wealth is the only way through this. But we'll be on it from day one. We've got the first things that we want to do on the first day in government. If we're privileged enough to come in to serve, we will have you in our mind's eye working. I mean, this is what's brilliant about coming out like this, is thinking about you and the things that you've said when we are trying to make tough decisions for the country. We want to make sure that you're never put in that position again. I'm not going to pretend we can fix it by the weekend after the election, because that's just not going to happen. But we can make sure that we create the conditions so you're never put in that. And you speak for millions of people, by the way. Millions of people in the same boat. I was really struck by a firefighter I met in Milton Keynes a couple of months ago. He has now taken 2 extra jobs, but he still can't afford a mortgage. He can't afford to get a house. He just wants to buy his own home, get a bit of security. 3 jobs and he still can't do it because of what's been done to the economy. That is the human impact of what we've had this last 14 years. Look, you make your own mind up, but honestly, that's the mindset we bring to it. Anyone else? Yeah, please, sir.
Thank you. You've mentioned Great British Energy and planning. Where would you see a Labour government having the most impact in the next 5 years on climate change and sustainability?
On climate change, well, Great British Energy is going to be an energy company that will drive our work on renewables. So whether that's floating offshore wind, wind turbines, nuclear, hydrogen, all of these are the energy of the future, and we want to make sure that we've got a publicly owned company that is not just driving forward that work, the production of energy and the investment that we need, but is also getting the yield back. Because at the moment what happens is that very often companies from other countries are doing this, and therefore when there's yield to be had from it, it's not coming back to us in this country, it's going somewhere else. Many of you will be probably paying your energy bills to companies that are actually owned by governments across the world and not by our government. So we want to change that. I do think this is a massive opportunity, by the way. I think that there's a race now for pretty well every green job that's going, and we would be good at that. We've got the skills for that. We've got the sort of workforce who'd be good at it, but we just need to drive it through now at pace to get the change that I think will bring lower bills, that will bring energy security, but also the next generation of jobs for the future. Rach, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so GB Energy, alongside the National Wealth Fund that we've already mentioned, which is about leveraging in private sector investment, because, government has a big role in encouraging the private sector to invest as well. And then we've also made a commitment, and it sort of goes back to the point you were making as well, to insulate 6 million homes during the course of the next Parliament. Some of that will be grants, some of that will be loans, but the best way to bring down people's energy bills is by reducing the need for energy in the home in the first place. And all of those things are about bringing good jobs, paying decent wages. That's the way to make people better off. Good jobs, paying decent wages, getting people's energy bills down, so tackling the cost of living, and also boosting our energy security and independence, because one of the things that we saw when Russia invaded Ukraine is that we are too reliant on countries, dictators abroad that don't share our values for our basic needs, as well as the importance of meeting our obligations to future generations to decarbonise the economy. But, because of our industrial heritage, because of our skilled workforce, because of our great universities and fantastic entrepreneurs, there's every reason to think that we can succeed and lead in many of these jobs and industries of the future, but only if you've got a government that makes it a priority. And for us, we really see this as a priority.
Can I just give you two practical examples that really etched on my mind? These wind turbines I mean, you know the size of them, they're massive. Huge amount of engineering and skill goes into them. The onshore version of this I saw just outside Glasgow. There's 250 of them, slightly smaller because they're fixed in the ground. It's an amazing thing to see, incredible source of energy. When I went up there, I saw the CEO of the energy company. I said, how many of these 250 were built in the UK? And he said, none of them. Every single one was being towed in. We've got to turn that around. We've got the engineering skills. We're able to do that design, and we can't simply live where we're not, creating the conditions in which that can be done here. So I do think there's a real opportunity for us to get ahead in the skills that we've got. So thank you very much. We've got time just for one more. I'm being indicated. Just one more quick one from anyone. Yeah, by all means.
Thank you. That was great, by the way. In terms of, I saw a stat the other day that there's 1.5 million carers as we stand here now. Now, firstly, the amount that saves us as a group of people. So I suppose there's two parts to my question. What further support are you going to give those carers? But also, there seems to be a massive opportunity there in terms of how do you bring them back into the workforce part-time? I'll be really interested in your views.
Two things about that I think matter. First is whether it's care workers or anybody else, there are quite a number of people who want to get back into the workforce, but are struggling to do so for one reason or another. Another example would be people who've been on long-term illness or sickness, getting back into the workforce. What we've got plans for is a supported scheme back into work for people, including things like trial, because some people will say, I don't want to do it because I've got to be all in or all out, and having companies that will say, we'll give a trial period to sit for a few weeks or whatever it may be to someone to see how they get on with the hours and being back in the work environment. So I think there's a lot in this in terms of, we went to see Siemens actually, who make the trains, just up the road relatively up the road in Crawley. They've got a supported back to work scheme that was really, really good for people who wanted to come back, some from care, but others from care, but others coming back after illnesses or operations and that sort of thing. But on the question of social care, because this is really important, we've got a lot of people working in social care who are on fragmented contracts, not particularly well paid, with no career progression, so they can't get on, and they're often struggling with their bills. And a lot of them leave as a result because the pay isn't good enough. They can't progress, and a lot of them leave to go to the NHS where they can actually progress. So we're constantly leaking people out of social care. And if we're leaking people out of social care, it means that we can't get people out of hospitals because they haven't got an environment to go back to. Our hospitals are full and we've got all the problems with the NHS. So we want a fair pay agreement across social care, which will be the first national agreement, which will put in place decent terms and conditions and progression so that you can come into social care and you can get on in. So my sister's a care worker, so it's something that's quite close to home. But to create the environment which people come in and feel that they can progress their career in social care, because it's a big issue in fixing the sort of wider health issues in the future. I'm really sorry we're running out of time. Can I just firstly thank you for your time, thank you for your questions. Can I also say, if there's something you wanted to ask or something you want us to think about, if you don't mind getting that through to my team, we will do our level best to answer anything you put through to us, because I don't want you to feel, well, I didn't get called or I didn't really formulate a question. If there's anything that you want me or Rachel or both of us to think about, if you could just put it down in an email or a piece of paper, or just tell one of my team, give your details, we will then try to get back to you with an answer to whatever your question is. Or just a point to say, what are you going to do about cost of living? Or I would do this if I were you. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that's great. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being with us. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all you do work-wise as well. Thank you. Are we doing? We're doing. This is Paul.
Does that still work for us? Ankle-wise?
No, you're fine to come in. Oh, you don't need to go in. Just depending on the shoulder.
So we're doing
Can you go
three-fold,
over the shoulder? Can you go over that shoulder? And then you give me a... No.
Just tell me when you're going to be.
Your right, left a bit. Your head, right, left shot. Yeah, that's perfect. I am ready, so you can go when you want.
Okay, so first of all, are you going to revisit tax?
On tax, we have set out our manifesto, which is very, very clear about not increasing tax on working people. Every plan in the manifesto is fully costed, fully funded, and none of our plans require tax rises over and above those we've already set out. What we do have in the manifesto is a plan for growth, which is what we're talking about here, which is the National Wealth Fund, and ensuring that we get the wealth into our economy to make sure that everybody is better off.
You mentioned in the speech there about revisiting the Brexit deal. Why do you want to do that? Can you do that without disappointing Leave voters? And is the review point the time to do that next year?
Our central focus and mission, if we come into government, will be on growing the economy and making sure that we're creating the wealth that this country needs. We've got brilliant skills. We've seen some of that at the port here. And that will make sure that everybody is better off. Now that means investing, attracting investment, and improving our relationship with the EU. It's not about going back into the EU. We've left, we're not going back. It's not about the single market or customs union. But I think everybody would say the deal we've got is not good enough and we could do better than that. But the focus is on growing our economy.
Now, Labour said that Jeremy Hunt has let the cat out of the bag and the government's already spent its welfare savings. The Conservatives have provided a list of policies that they say have been announced since the baseline was set. Are you misleading them?
What's emerged this morning is truly extraordinary because $1 no less than the